I grew up in rural Montana. I've been hiking since I was 9 years old. I've spent nights alone in the backcountry more times than I can count. So when I tell you that what happened to me on the Appalachian Trail 3 years ago was the most terrifying experience of my life, I need you to understand that's not a statement I make lightly. It was early October, that window right before the trail gets brutal. The leaves had gone full amber and rust. The air had that clean, biting edge to it, and the crowds had thinned out almost entirely. Which is exactly why I chose that time to go. I'd taken 2 weeks off work, packed light, and planned to cover about 180 miles of trail starting at Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, heading north. Solo, the way I preferred it. I was maybe 6 days in when I met Marcus. He appeared on the trail around midday, heading the same direction I was. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and with an oversized pack and a wide-brimmed hat that sat low over his face. He waved when he saw me, and I waved back. That's just trail culture. You nod, you wave, you move on. But Marcus fell into pace with me, and within a few minutes we were talking. He said he was from Asheville. Said he'd been hiking the trail on and off for years, doing it in sections. He seemed normal, friendly even. He laughed at his own jokes, asked me the right kinds of questions, where I was from, how far I was going, whether I'd done this stretch before. I remember thinking he was one of those easy, comfortable strangers you occasionally run into. The kind you walk with for an hour and then never think about again. But somewhere in that first hour I started noticing things. Little things. The kind your brain files away without telling you why. He never mentioned anyone at home. No partner, no family, no friends who'd asked him not to go. When I talked about my sister calling to check on me every couple of days, he got this look on his face. Not jealousy exactly, more like confusion. Like the concept was foreign to him. And then he smiled, and it was gone. I told myself I was reading too much into it. We made camp separately that night. His tent was maybe 200 yards from mine, just visible through the trees. I made dinner, read for a while, went to sleep around 9. Normal night. But at 2 a.m., I woke up. I didn't know why at first. I lay there in my sleeping bag, staring at the dark ceiling of my tent, listening. The woods were doing what woods do at night. Wind through branches, the occasional crack of something settling. Nothing unusual. But my body was completely rigid. Every instinct I had was saying something is off. I unzipped the tent slowly, just a few inches, and looked out. Marcus was standing at the edge of the tree line, not moving, just standing there facing my tent. I couldn't see his face, it was too dark for that, but his silhouette was unmistakable. That height, that hat. He was just standing there in the dark at 2 in the morning, completely still in the direction of my tent. I told myself he'd gotten up to use the bathroom. I told myself he was stargazing. I told myself a dozen reasonable things while my heart slammed against my ribs. Then I zipped my tent back up, lay perfectly still, and didn't sleep again until the sky started to lighten. In the morning, I broke camp early and quietly. I didn't go to say goodbye. I just left. I pushed hard that day, put serious miles between us. By early afternoon, I'd reached a shelter where a group of 4 thru-hikers were taking a lunch break, and I sat down with them and ate and let the sound of other people's voices settle my nerves. I even laughed at something. I started to feel like myself again. Then around 4 o'clock, Marcus walked into the shelter. He didn't seem surprised to see me. He just smiled and set his pack down and said, "Figured I'd catch up eventually." One of the other hikers invited him to camp with the group that night. Marcus looked at me when he said yes. I made a decision then. I wasn't going to hike with this group. I wasn't going to sleep near this man again. Something was wrong with him. I couldn't name it, couldn't prove it, but my body had already decided. I made an excuse about needing to push further to meet a mileage goal. Packed up, left. The next 2 days were fine. No sign of Marcus. I started to breathe again. I stopped checking over my shoulder every 20 minutes. I told myself the nighttime thing had a rational explanation. People sleepwalk. People do weird things in the dark when they're alone in the woods for too long. I'd done enough solo hiking to know your mind can play tricks on you. Then on the second night, I found it. I'd set up camp in a flat clearing just off trail. It was a good spot. I'd camped there before years ago. But when I went to hang my food bag from a branch at the edge of the clearing, I saw something carved into the bark of the tree. Low, almost at eye level, 3 words, "I know you." The cuts were fresh. The wood underneath was still pale and wet. Whoever made them had been there within the last day or 2 at most. I stood there for a long time staring at those words. Then I took down my tent, put everything back in my pack, and I hiked in the dark for 4 straight hours until I hit a road crossing. I flagged down the first car that passed. An older couple from Pennsylvania. They took one look at my face and didn't ask many questions. They drove me to a gas station. I called my sister. I told her I was coming home. I never reported it. I know how it sounds. How do you report carved words in a tree? What exactly is the crime? But I've thought about it almost every day since. About how long he must have been behind me without my knowing. About what he wanted. About what might have happened if I'd stayed. I go back and forth on it still. Maybe Marcus was just strange. Maybe it was all coincidence and my own fear building something out of nothing. I've almost convinced myself of that a few times. But then I remember those 3 words cut fresh into the bark of a tree at a campsite I had never told him about. And I stopped trying to explain it. I almost didn't go that weekend. My car needed an oil change. My hiking boots had a split sole I kept meaning to fix, and honestly, I was just tired. But my buddy Liam had been planning this trip for 2 months. Shawnee National Forest, Southern Illinois. He sent me the trail map on a Tuesday with a single message. "You bail on me and I'm never speaking to you again." So I went. We drove down Friday after work, got there around 9 at night, set up camp in the dark and fell asleep to the sound of crickets and wind moving through the trees. It was the best I'd slept in months. The kind of sleep you only get when you're far enough from everything that your brain finally stops running. Saturday morning was perfect. Cool air, overcast sky, the trail winding through sandstone formations that looked like something out of another planet. Liam was in front, I was behind, and we were maybe 4 miles in when we crossed paths with another hiker coming the opposite direction. He was older, mid-60s maybe, wearing a faded red jacket and carrying a walking stick. He stopped when he saw us, which wasn't unusual. Hikers nod, make small talk, share trail conditions, normal stuff. But what he said wasn't normal. He looked at us for a moment, then said, "You boys camping out tonight?" Liam said, "Yeah, we were doing the full loop, camping at the south end." The man nodded slowly. Not the friendly kind of nod, the kind where someone is deciding how much to tell you. He said, "I'd think hard about that if I were you. There was a group out here last weekend, 3 of them. They had some kind of trouble." Liam asked what kind of trouble. The man looked down the trail, then back at us. "The kind that doesn't make the news." And then he just kept walking. We stood there for a second, looked at each other, and did what every overconfident person in their 30s does. We laughed it off. Creepy old guy, probably lonely, probably just wanted someone to talk to. We kept going. The next few hours were fine, beautiful even. We ate lunch on a flat rock overlooking a valley, and I remember thinking I needed to do this more. Get out of the city, breathe real air, stop letting work eat my life. That's the thing about what happened next. It followed the best part of the day. It always does. We made camp around 5 in the afternoon, set up the tent, got a fire going. The south end of the loop was more isolated, fewer trail markers, no other campers nearby that we could see. The tree cover was denser, and by 7 o'clock the darkness came in thick and fast. That's when Liam noticed the fire, not ours. Another one, about a quarter-mile through the trees, just a faint orange glow barely visible. We figured it was another camper. We went back to cooking our food, talking, doing nothing in particular. But around 9 I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The other fire hadn't moved. Campfires shift, they die down, they flare up. This one was perfectly unnaturally still, like a light, not a fire, constant, fixed. I pointed it out to Liam, and he said I was being paranoid. Maybe it was a lantern, maybe they just had a solid fire going. But I couldn't stop looking at it. Somewhere around 10 o'clock, Liam went into the tent. I stayed up a little longer because I'm stubborn and I didn't want to feel like that light had beaten me. That's when I heard it. Not from the direction of the light, but from directly behind our campsite. A slow, deliberate sound, like something heavy being dragged across dry leaves. Not fast, not panicked, methodical. I turned around. My flashlight caught the edge of the tree line. There was a man standing there, not moving. Just standing, maybe 30 feet back in the trees, arms at his sides, face angled slightly down. He wasn't wearing a headlamp. He had no gear that I could see. He was just there in the dark at 10 o'clock at night, watching our fire. My voice came out quieter than I wanted it to. I said, "Hey, can I help you?" He didn't answer. I said it again, louder. Nothing. I stood up slowly, heart pounding, and I called for Liam. The second I raised my voice, the man turned and walked back into the trees. Not running, walking, like he had all the time in the world and had simply decided he was done. Liam came out of the tent and I told him what I saw. He didn't laugh that time. We made the decision fast. Pack the essentials, leave the rest, get back to the car. It was 11 miles back to the trailhead, and we were going to walk them in the dark. Liam had a GPS unit, I had my phone. We killed the fire, stuffed our bags, and started moving. The next 2 hours were the longest of my life. Every sound on that trail was amplified, every branch, every shift in the wind, every animal moving through the underbrush. We didn't talk. We moved fast and stayed close and kept our lights pointed at the ground. At one point around mile 3, Liam grabbed my arm and we stopped. Someone was on the trail behind us. We could hear it. Footsteps about 100 yards back, moving at exactly our pace. We stood still and the sound stopped. We started walking and it started again. We sped up and it sped up. Liam pulled out his phone and called 911, but the signal dropped before anyone answered. Out there in the middle of the national forest, we were completely alone. We ran, not a jog, we ran. Through the dark, over roots and rocks, with our flashlights bouncing and our lungs burning. We didn't stop until we hit the gravel lot and I could see the outline of my car. We sat in that car for 10 minutes before either of us spoke. We drove to the nearest town, found a gas station, and sat under fluorescent lights drinking bad coffee until 4 in the morning. We reported what happened to the park ranger station when it opened at 7. The ranger took our statement carefully and didn't dismiss it. She said they'd had incidents in that area before. She didn't elaborate on what kind. We never went back for our gear. To this day, I don't know who that man was in the trees. I don't know if the person behind us on the trail was the same person. I still hike. I couldn't let that stop me completely. But I go to busy trails now with other people around, and I always leave before dark. And I never ignore the people who try to warn me. My buddy Lucas had been hyping up this trail in the Smoky Mountains for months. Supposed to be one of those hidden gems, he said. Off the main path, barely on the maps. The kind of place where you don't run into other tourists every 10 feet. Just you and the mountain. I should have asked more questions. I should have asked who told him about it. I should have asked why it was barely on the maps. I didn't. And by the time I figured out why no one talked about that trail, we were already deep inside it. There were 3 of us. Me, Lucas, and his cousin Devin. We left the trailhead around 7 in the morning, early enough that the mist was still sitting low over the ridgeline, clinging to the trees like it didn't want to let go. The air smelled clean. Pine, wet dirt, that sharp coolness that hits the back of your throat and makes you feel like you made the right choice coming out here. The first couple hours were perfect. The trail wound up through old-growth forest, and I mean old. The kind of trees so thick you could press both palms flat against the bark and still not reach halfway around. Hardly any undergrowth, just these massive trunks going straight up like columns, and above them a canopy so dense it filtered the light down in these long angled shafts. It was quiet in a way that felt respectful, like the place was asking you to lower your voice. We stopped for lunch on a flat rock near a creek, ate our sandwiches, and everything still felt fine. Lucas had this paper map, actual paper, which he thought made him look outdoorsy, and he spread it out and traced the route with his finger. We were ahead of schedule. Maybe 2 more hours to the summit overlook, then back down before dark. Easy. That's when Devin noticed the cairn. Hikers stack cairns all the time. Little towers of balanced stones to mark trails, to signal you're going the right way. But this one was different. It wasn't on the trail, it was off to the left, maybe 30 feet into the trees, just barely visible. And it wasn't stacked the way hikers do it. Loose, casual. This one was tight, deliberate, like someone had spent real time on it. Devin walked over to look, and that's when he saw there was another one behind it. Farther in, and another one behind that. A line of them disappearing into the dark between the trees. Lucas laughed it off. Said it was probably some artist thing or a trail crew messing around. I didn't say anything, but I took a photo. I don't know why. Something in my gut just said, document this. We kept moving. The trail got narrower after that. The map showed it widening again near the summit, but it kept thinning. Brush creeping in from both sides, roots pushing up through the dirt. The kind of trail that made you wonder how long it had been since anyone maintained it. An hour passed. Then another. The overlook wasn't appearing. Lucas checked the map again. He checked it 3 times, flipping it, turning it like the paper was going to tell him something different. Finally, he admitted what I already knew. He wasn't sure where we were. The trail had bent in a direction that didn't match, and somewhere in the last mile we'd either taken a wrong fork or the path had just quietly become something else entirely. We decided to double back. Standard protocol. Don't push forward when you're lost. Retrace your steps, find a landmark. Get to the last point where you knew where you were. The problem was the trail looked different going the other direction. It always does, I know that. But this was more than that. The light had shifted. It was getting later than I realized. The gold going out of it, and the shadows between the trees had deepened. And I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest had rearranged itself while we weren't looking. I knew that was irrational. I told myself it was irrational. But my hands were getting clammy and I was checking the tree line more than I was checking the trail. Then Lucas stopped walking. He was looking at a tree just off the path. A beech. Smooth gray bark, the kind that people carve into. And someone had carved into this one. Not initials, not a heart, 2 words. Turn around. Devin said it was probably old. Some weird kid thing from decades ago. Lucas said the edges of the carving were still pale, fresh wood underneath, not yet darkened by weather. Meaning it was recent. We moved faster after that. Not running. We weren't at that point yet. But faster, nobody talking, the only sound our boots on the trail and the creek somewhere below us and the occasional crack of something settling in the canopy overhead. Then Devin grabbed my arm. He pointed. Ahead of us on the trail, maybe 50 yards, there was a tent. A small backpacking tent, forest green, set up right at the edge of the path. No campfire, no gear spread outside. Just the tent, zipped shut, still as anything. We stood there and looked at it for a long moment. Lucas called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" And his voice disappeared into the trees like it had never existed. Nothing answered. We went around it. Wide around it, through the brush, not talking, not making eye contact with each other. I don't know what I was afraid of seeing. I don't know what I thought was in there. I still don't know. And I think that's the part that haunts me most. We found the main trail about 20 minutes later, the real one, the marked one, and the second our boots hit that wide, worn path with its little brown wooden signs, all 3 of us let out a breath at the same time, like we'd been holding it without realizing. We made it to the parking lot just as the last strip of daylight left the sky. Didn't speak the whole drive down the mountain. I've never gone back to find out. And if you ever find yourself on a trail in the Smokies that gets quiet in a way that doesn't feel right, that feels less like peace and more like warning, do yourself a favor. read the signs, and turn around. If these stories got under your skin, you are not alone. Drop a comment below and tell me which one scared you the most. I read every single one, and if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button right now. Stay safe out there, and maybe, just maybe, skip the solo hike this weekend. I will see you in the next horror story.